guys, those rookies, the Pacom Daddies, the Jacob Toppins, right? The Tyler Koleks, those young kids. He wants to get them that check. It means a lot to Brunson. And honestly, folks, it's going to mean a lot to this New York Knicks franchise that's never been back to the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Finals since 1999.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the...
It's time to rise and grind on this glorious Wednesday morning. It is December the 11th, 2024. And over the next 3 hours, we got you covered along the hottest topics across the sports landscape. NBA Cup action, we got you here. You want to talk some hockey? We have you. You want hot topics in the NFL? Oh, yeah, this is the show for you. It's Donnie Rightside. It's Stubbs Anderson. It's the SportsGrid Network, and it's the Early Line, Dubsy. And we are ready to rock and roll.
Happy Wednesday, Donnie, and apparently it was a late evening for you boys, so we are getting after it bright and early. I've done the stretches, feeling nice and limber, and there's a lot going on. Big trades, big games, big marquee matchups that we've got to get the people primed up for, and we've got plays on top of plays. So let's make it a profitable Wednesday, halfway through the work week, hopefully not halfway through that bankroll. Let's go.
Yep, your boy DRS always likes to pride himself, Dubs, on getting to bed at an early time. But yesterday we did have to make the exception with the Christmas party in the city, Midtown Manhattan. Both myself and the wife came. Everybody had a good time there last night. The SportsGrid Network, Dubsy, we're on a roll. And you know what else is on a roll? The 7-7 right now, the hottest topics across the sports landscape. And I was in the city last night, and somebody was getting paid in the city, and that was by the New York Yankees. How about this? The Yankees signed Max Fried to a record 8-year, $218 million deal, one of the largest contracts to a left-handed pitcher with guarantees in Major League Baseball history. They missed out on Soto. They struck with Max Fried.
This is going to be a formidable number 2 there for the Yankees in that rotation. They lose Soto, but this is a massive get. 8 years, $218 million, the largest ever contract issued to a left-handed pitcher, the fourth biggest that we've ever seen for any pitcher in the majors. So that is a monster deal, and certainly bodes well on what's been a tough week for you Yankee fans. So maybe a bit of brightness after all, but another big payday as they continue to spend, Donnie.
Absolutely. And also, when you take a look at over the past 5 years for him, talking about Max Fried, 2.81 ERA, which is tops in the majors, just ahead of Corbin Burns' 2.88. He's been a sensational pitcher for the Braves. The Braves will miss him, but you knew the Yankees were open for business, Dubsy, and they got a big free agent off the market. You can never have too much pitching here. And how about this? Too much pitching? Let's take a look at the Rangers. Just a few short years ago, winning a World Series. Nathan Eovaldi comes back on a 3-year, $75 million deal. And also, Blue Jays trade for Jimenez. You know what's good about that move? You get good defense from a Gold Glover here. The hot stove, Dubsy, heating up here on a Wednesday.
Yeah, I like that get there for Jimenez as well, the former Met, 3-time Golden Glove winner, has been there with Cleveland for the last few years, still playing some really strong baseball, gives them a bit more depth, coming off a pretty strong season there as well. So all things point towards making another run towards that postseason, but the time is now. Some of these contracts, Donnie, it really is mind-blowing. You know, baseball, it's America's favorite pastime, but the numbers that we're seeing, some of the biggest sporting contracts in the history, and it's, you know, rightfully so. It moves the needle, but Jimenez, it's another good ad from what we've seen the last couple of days.
Exactly. A $765 million contract's being thrown out there for Soto. Baseball finally moving along, Dubs. I just wish we had it like the other sports where the big, free agents go the first 1, 2, or 3 days here so everybody gets excited. We sort of wait around for it and it sort of filter through right up till spring training here. But some good moves for some baseball teams trying to improve themselves. I believe they did, particularly with the Yankees getting maybe the best free agent pitcher on the market. Let's get over to NBA Cup action because it was big last night. And if you're wondering, why so limited games here? The NBA likes to clear the schedule and get standalone basketball games. One of those games, the Oklahoma City Thunder advance over the Dallas Mavericks 118-104. You look at the starting lineups here, that's where you want to factor it in. How about 23 shot attempts here for SGA, which accounted for 39 points and a plus 22 as the Thunder move on over the Dallas Mavericks.
The Thunder absolutely charging there, 118-104. You highlighted SGA with a big performance. Jalen Williams, he was in his bag, and Hardenstein was good there as well, 10 points and 13 rebounds. So this was a fantastic matchup. They'll square off against the winner of Golden State and Houston later here for your Wednesday evening. But OKC, one of the hottest young teams in basketball. We saw it last season. They have not missed a step so far going through the NBA Cup.
Yeah, we got 2 more games tonight in NBA Cup action that Dubsy and myself will preview a little bit later in the show, so some good action on the court. But there was another game last night in Milwaukee who opened the season not looking too good, Dubsy, but playing much better basketball lately. Maybe it's just because they're getting healthier. 114-109 over the Magic, and the key word is health. The Magic aren't healthy, but still playing decent basketball. They didn't win yesterday, but they did cover the spread against the Milwaukee Bucks. But the Bucks move on. No surprise, they're big too. Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, both with big nights last night.
Yeah, and that's been the big difference maker for this Bucks team who's got a lot of momentum right now out there on the floor. Giannis is playing tremendous. Dame's looking comfortable. They had more than 60 points between the two of them, and this will be the only team that we saw last season going back to the semifinals over there in Sin City. So watch out for the Bucks. If they can figure it out, Donnie, I tell you what, they are going to be a very scary proposition. Not so much about this NBA Cup. They're going to be one of the big contenders here, obviously, but going to win the big dance and finally get a championship ring there. So great to see NBA Cup action. I don't know, Donnie. I was opposed to it, but I feel like there's a bit more juice as we get through the quarterfinals and moving into the semifinals. It's getting a bit more exciting for me.
Yeah, get the superstars. They'll play hard. Some money is involved, and also a free trip to Las Vegas always gets their attention. But again, 2 more games tonight. Fun games yesterday. We'll see how it turns out. Fun in games down in South Beach, Dubsy? Maybe not. Jimmy Butler looking for a way out down there from Pat Riley's grasp. Does he get traded? Does he move on? And also, are they good to be open to these offers, or should Jimmy Butler be staying in Miami, Dubs?
Jimmy Buckets. I mean, when you think South Beach, the Miami Heat, you think Jimmy Butler, what he's achieved for this team with a lack of weapons around him in the past 6 years has been nothing short of tremendous. Has taken him to 2 NBA Finals appearances. He's been the Eastern Conference Finals MVP for one of those runs. I mean, he's still one of the best offensive weapons in the league. He can also shut it down on the defensive side. And he's highlighted a couple of his favorite destinations. He wants to go to a contender, and where's he going to get that? Possibly the Golden State Warriors, maybe over there with the Dallas Mavericks. But for Jimmy Buckets, I know he's dealt with injury over the seasons, but still one of the best players in the association. It's a little sad, Donnie, because without Jimmy, there's no Heat, if you ask me, and I'd love to see him have a bit of success. If it's not going to come there, if they're not going to get him the strike power outside, then maybe it's time to move on for Jimmy Butler.
strong veteran presence could help a team win an NBA championship. We'll see if they help facilitate that trade. Talking about the Miami Heat. When we say Dubsy in the building, well, technically when you take a train into New York City, come out in Penn Station, right under Madison Square Garden, which had the Jimmy V Classic yesterday. Game number 1, Tennessee smokes Miami as the number 1 team in the country, 75-62. And game number 2 was exciting, a game of runs. Michigan an early lead. Arkansas opens up a lead. Arkansas finally holds on for an 89-87 victory over top 15 Michigan.
Points. That was a big upset, close one, thriller there. Wolf couldn't do enough at his disposal there with the 14-9. So well done, Arkansas. They got that big victory. Houston were massive over Troy in a low scorer. We don't have the same kind of slate coming up later this evening, but certainly a couple of exciting games. Get to see Kentucky back in the mix there. But the Jimmy V Classic, turning it on. I thought the common theme the Tuesday night was low scoring with intensity going up. Maybe look towards the unders on a lot of these big totals.
Exactly. Sometimes the college basketball season starts to slow down. You got to take those finals, Dubsy, at the end of the semester, because keep in mind, they are educational student athletes out here trying to earn a living eventually and hopefully make their way to the NBA. We have a good topic here that we're going to talk about ad nauseum throughout this show. Bill Belichick coming out of nowhere and look like he's going to accept the job at UNC. Not official yet, but what are we feeling about BB over here?
I was a little shocked, Donnie. I'm like, no, surely if Bill's coming back to coach, it's going to be in the National Football League. But, hey, it is what it is. I mean, he's achieved maybe everything he wanted to achieve in the NFL with the Patriots over his 24 seasons. They're having the 6 championships. Interesting times indeed. Could Bill put pen to paper? Time will tell.
No doubt about it. It's the early line on a Wednesday. It's Dubs and Donnie. We're going to be right back with more Hot Topic.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
I'm actually not even on a side today. Yeah. And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
News travels fast around the world, especially when you're dealing with Bill Belichick, one of the single best coaches in the history of professional sports. Doesn't matter what sport. He's won multiple championships here, had a grasp on that New England pulse for decades, it felt like. And now probably was looking for a job in the NFL, but maybe switches over to college football. Dubsy, we had a tweet yesterday here from Ollie Connolly. Update. Belichick has agreed to become the next UNC coach. Handed the school a 400-page organizational Bible with structure, payment plans, staffing choices, decisions on whether to commit with North Carolina. He is expected to know the decision within 24 hours. Before we get into it here, Dubs, did it shock you as much as me that Bill Belichick interviewed with North Carolina in college football?
It did at first, Donnie, and I sat back and I'm thinking, could this actually be a go? Is this a legitimate sort of newsworthy item that Bill Belichick could actually be getting set to sign off and become the head coach of North Carolina? And the more I think about it, Donnie, I don't know. I feel like it's good timing. We're approaching the back end of the NFL season for someone who's achieved so much in the National Football League. Would he really want to go back to the college ranks and try and turn this ship around? What would be the end goal? What would be the carrot for Bill Belichick? We've heard reports that it's all about getting the son a gig, once his tenure were to come to an end. I don't buy into that. I think that's a bit of smoke. So at first glance, Donnie, I think this may be a bit of a ploy for Bill to get himself back in the headlines here in search of getting back into the NFL for next season. But tell you what, some reports on social media absolutely ablaze with saying that it's very likely that it could happen.
The interesting part that you brought up there, too, is I've railed on the decision for the Los Angeles Lakers to get Bronny James. Now, you're going to do a lot for your superstar players just to keep them happy and in town. But sometimes you feel like it has to be done on merit. Like if Bronny James was drafted by the Toronto Raptors in the second round and earned his way into playing time, you'd feel much better about it than the Lakers saying, all right, you're going to make sure you draft him. We're going to put the word out to not to draft him from any other team so we can get him. And then I'm going to dictate if he goes to the G League, when he goes, and if he's flying commercial or private. Now you take a look at UNC here, where I do think it's a big fish to land in Bill Belichick. But again, the pro game, much different than the college game. Now, football is football, but there's a lot of other things that go into college football as opposed to the pro game. Now, when you talk about, what Bill Belichick is looking to do here from an investment standpoint, the salary minimums, I don't even know if that's basically the salary minimums for the coaching staff and then the players themselves. And he wants to hire two staffs. Let me handle the football, but I need a complete recruiting staff that's going to report back to me to make sure we get these players in that we need. But also in that contract is, I'm going to take this job and do you a solid, but when I leave here, which could be in a year, 2 years, 3 years, however, my son is going to take over here. So does that lead us to believe, Dubsy, that his son is not an actual good coach because he was a coach in New England, made sure his son was there with him, now wants to take him to Carolina, but his son wouldn't be good enough to get the Carolina job now, but somehow if Belichick takes the job, he automatically gets his son as a job. I don't even know if we're breaking any laws at this point down in North Carolina with nepotism, saying basically, I want my kid to get the job after I leave here. That's the one thing that sort of draws me out, saying, what's the motives here? Is it to win in college or make sure I'm just taking care of my son so he has a job?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And, Steve Belichick just finished his first season at the University of Washington as that defensive coordinator. But I feel like there could be different, tactics in place here, Donnie, and certainly, success would merit taking over that starting role. And, I also bring in the NIL side of college football now, Donnie. It's not so much about the best coach who's going to get the best results. It's about attracting that star power. And a lot of young kids would want to come and play for Bill Belichick, of course. He knows how to get them ready for the NFL, but they'd also like to go where they're going to get the bag and, maybe go and play for Coach Prime over there at Colorado. So for Bill Belichick to know that in the back of his mind, he could do everything in his power, including a 400-page onboarding document there, and it still couldn't be enough for a program that went 6-6 through this year's season. I don't know. I think he'd be a little cautious towards this one. And, for Steve, obviously he's strong with what he brings to a program, but you'd certainly want to see a bit more of a trajectory towards that head coaching position before he could ultimately just take over the reins. And I don't know, Donnie, I feel like there'd be, a lot of suitors saying how good Bill would be for the program and getting eyeballs and a bit of buzz there, but there'd always be that question mark, what are we getting from Bill? But what are we getting from Steve? If we were to cement him, is it for 1 year as head coach? Is it 3 years as head coach? Like, what would be the way in which we could part ways? I don't know. I feel like that's a really murky side of it.
It is. And also, the pro game to the college game, very different as it is, but also they're kids as opposed to professionals. Let's just say if you are the Patriots and you draft a football player, you probably have the rights for at least, 3, 4, 5 years, and you are going to buy into the Patriot way, or else you are going to sit on the bench. College football now, hey, I'm going to go play for Bill Belichick at North Carolina. Got there the first 2 weeks. I don't like this. Put my name in the portal. Bill Belichick can't block you there on that. And also, the portal, not just because you're even happy, but I'm going to play well my freshman year, and I'm going to test the waters in the portal at the end of the season. So Belichick's going to want to re-recruit those same players that he just recruited the previous years. It's a young man's game here. I don't hate the move for Belichick to go to Carolina because I do think it's intriguing, but I don't know if it's some sort of slam dunk hire. And also, how are NFL teams, Dubsy, not calling Belichick saying, hey, we would like you to come in for an interview and get a job? I mean, you're talking about the most successful coach in the history of the NFL, and he's taking jobs that are mid-level in college. That's what gets me the most.
Yeah, and I think this is the perfect ploy to get Bill back in the story, the headlines on the back pages, trending on social media, Bill Belichick getting set for a return. And I think there'd be a lot of owners sitting around saying, hey, if this has some kind of, gravitas to it, we're going to have to act pretty swiftly here and try and meet with Bill and secure something going into next season. There's a lot of good head coaches in the NFL right now, but there's a couple which are a little questionable, and I certainly think that Bill Belichick would still bring plenty on a Sunday afternoon, more so than playing early on a Saturday. So I think it's all a bit of a stunt, Donnie, but time will tell. Maybe a signature goes through this week, but I certainly think it's not going to be the case. I expect Bill to be back in the NFL next season.
You know what I would love, Dubsy, too? Like if he's coaching college football, whether it be like one of the military academies, like Army, Navy, or Air Force, I think he would fit right in, loves that type of culture and that type of stronghold, because those kids aren't hitting the portal all that much last time I checked. We got more hot topics, which includes stepping back over into the NFL. Are bad things brewing in Philadelphia? Dubsy and Donnie, we'll talk about it.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro football today, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Back in the NFL, you might think not very many hot topics happen, Dubsy, throughout the week in the NFL, but oh, yes, they do, which includes one of the better teams in football, the Philadelphia Eagles, sitting with 11 wins and 2 losses. The issue with the Eagles is not winning football games. They've won 9 games in a row coming out of the bye. They look like one of the better teams in the NFL. Nick Sirianni certainly has the ear to the ground and said, you know what? This could have went off the rails at 2-2, and now look at how many wins we have in a row. But as we know, wide receivers, Dubsy, are certainly an interesting breed in the NFL. They don't care what the final score is. They don't care what's going on around them. They want to eat at the table if they feel that they have a chance to dominate a football game. A.J. Brown, one of the single best football players in the NFL, let alone wide receivers, he's not getting a lot of passes coming his way, and he's certainly letting people know about it. So Eagles' Nick Sirianni said, you know what? Let me clarify these comments. I don't think these two, talking about Jalen Hurts and also A.J. Brown, are going at each other. But what do you think brewing in Philadelphia? Is this a bad omen, or is this just a wide receiver saying, get me the football, and maybe I won't be the squeaky wheel over here?
I think it's going to be a must-play coming in for the next matchup. A.J. Brown's going to see plenty more targets and plenty more production. Look, Donnie, this is sign of the times. The wide receivers, loudest boys in the build in that locker room. Who cares? You're winning football games. That's all that really matters. Do you want to win a ring, or do you want to stuff the stat sheet on a Sunday and try and get yourself a couple extra, salary bucks there? I don't buy into this one. Sirianni's done a fantastic job. There was a lot of question marks. There was a lot of pressure on Nick Sirianni coming in for this season. The Eagles have absolutely figured it out. I know they're doing it with that run game, but to try and blame Jalen Hurts in the passing game when A.J. Brown was asked after last weekend's game against Carolina, that's not good enough. It's not something that you want in the locker room either. You're just taking confidence away from your star quarterback in Jalen. So right now, they're winning, Donnie. What else do you need? I mean, is that not enough for A.J. Brown? This absolutely gets me rolled up. So I'm not here for it, but look towards A.J. Brown. I bet he's going to see a few more targets coming up.
A lot of these wide receivers, which maybe includes A.J. Brown, you sort of take it out of context, but you sort of live in the moment, because if you would give them truth serum, hey, you lost last week, and they go, well, what were my numbers? 9 for 126 and 2 touchdowns. Like, yeah, I'll live with that. We'll get back on track next week in the win column. But when you're winning 9 in a row, it's hard to look at a wide receiver and say, hey, you know what? I understand you're not getting the football, but we're winning games. And also me being an Eagles fan, you watch Eagles games, and yes, the passing game is a little bit dysfunctional right now, which it shouldn't be. A dominant offensive line, a dominant running game, which automatically should open up the passing game, and 2 of the better wide receivers in football, and Devonta Smith on one side and A.J. Brown on the other. You are going to get some of these quirks. But let me ask you this question, too, because this is coming off the heels of last year, Dubsy, in Philadelphia, where they had an epic collapse to end the season. One of the best teams in football record-wise completely fell apart, which ended on a Monday night playoff game in Tampa where they were embarrassed and went into the offseason. Is this something looming to you? Because for me, this is easily be able to work around. You're still winning football games. You get them the ball a little bit more. But could this be the downfall? Pittsburgh Steelers coming into town this weekend, and if A.J. Brown gets 3 catches, Dubsy, for 36 yards and no touchdowns, and the Eagles lose, now you're going to have some fun.
Well, it's a tough secondary that they're going up against. But no, I don't think this is enough to take the train off the tracks. Even though we saw, a similar thing last season, we've heard a bit of smoke that there's been, a bit of back and forth in the locker room. We've heard that all season long, that Sirianni's trying to get the house in order. They're still winning football games. I think this is a wake-up call. You look at Jalen Hurts, and don't know the guy personally, Donnie, but he just seems like the consummate professional who would absolutely eat the criticism, eat the feedback, acknowledge that the passing game has not been good enough. And watch out, if this is an area that they can, take a forward step with and show a bit of improvement and get that 1-2 punch going again down the field after setting the table with Saquon Barkley, who's having one of the best seasons of his career. Watch out. The Eagles are getting set to fly to even further heights. And AJ, he's going to see plenty of targets, and he's going to have to deliver when he's called upon there as well. So I think the contrary. I think this could be the spark, the extra rally and motivation to hopefully bring this locker room together and say, hey, we're trying to do something really special. We've put ourselves in a really good position here, and we're still doing it with a bit of a weakness. So let's try and address that moving forward, and watch out. If that passing game can start connecting, Donnie, you're going to be putting up points against some very tough outfits as well.
And also on the radio in Philadelphia, Brandon Graham, who's a 15-year vet who got his tricep injured this year, is now out for the season, went on radio and goes, hey, look, man, A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts used to be really good friends. Now I don't think they are. So there might be some turmoil boiling. But you know how to get it over with a wide receiver and have him be your best friend again? Just throw him the football. It's that easy. We're talking about one wide receiver in Philadelphia. How about another wide receiver in San Francisco? Upset Dubsy. We'll talk about him next.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Wide receivers, Dubsy. Yeah, squeaky wheel gets the oil here. They want the football. Me, Dubsy, when I was in college, I always wanted the football. The good part about my team is we were usually down every single fourth quarter for most of the time, and that's when I used to eat and get the football. But even if you are winning or losing, NFL wide receivers want to be involved. We're talking about Deebo Samuel, one of the most productive wide receivers over the past 5 to 6 years, a big paycheck guy who wants to live up to the hype and just goes, it's not me. I'm just not getting the football. Now, Dubs, when I watch 49er games, Deebo doesn't look the same. Doesn't look as fast. Maybe looks a little bit more puffy out there if you get the drift, as if he might have gained some weight and just is a little bit more sluggish. But he says it's not his fault. I just want the football, Dubsy. Is that the case in San Francisco?
And look, Donnie, I got to put you up there. I've also dealt with the same problem. It's called putting on muscle, Donnie. It's called putting on muscle. It's not that winter coat, if you know what I'm saying. But he is struggling. You know, Deebo told us, I'm not struggling. I'm just not seeing the rock. I'm not getting the ball. No, he looks like he's missing that first step, and that can be the difference between being wide open or being shut down on a various amount of plays there. So it hasn't been good for the 49ers in battling with injury. For Deebo Samuel, he sounded off, and rightfully so there, Donnie. And, you know, it's easy for me to sit here and give the wide receivers a hard time, but there's incentives towards a lot of their contracts. You know, once it's all said and done at the end of a pretty mediocre year here for the 49ers, if they're not to go on and make it through to the playoffs, Deebo's going to be saying, well, I didn't hit my target share. But right now, they're trying everything. They are just trying to win football games. They got a very tough assignment coming up against the Rams on deck there. So I think they'll take a bit of confidence away from what we saw over Chi-Town, over Chicago. And Deebo Samuel, when he is singing, when he is on, he is one of the most electric weapons in the NFL, but we just haven't seen that, and we haven't seen the same team outfit chemistry from the 49ers. So I think it's just a sign of the times that we haven't had the same kind of cohesion that we saw at this point of the year last year for San Francisco. So right now, it's not a case of, you got to put up with how it's playing out, but you got to have a bit of patience there, my guy Debo. You guys are trying to turn it around, and it starts week by week, and by him getting a bit more rock, maybe that's going to open things up.
You would think it would, and also, like over the past couple of years, Dubsy, if you said, Donnie, who's one player that if you had to coach a team that you could get the ball in space and would make dominant plays, like you better make sure you get me Deebo Samuel. But look at the last 4 games here. And again, this isn't one game. This is 4 games combined. 97 total yards for scrimmage on 17 touches, which means he hasn't exceeded 35 or more yards in the last 4 games. We're talking about Deebo Samuel. It's supposed to be 97 yards from scrimmage per game. We'll see if it turns around. The one thing you had to like about the Niners, got back on track against the Chicago Bears, but it might just be too late at this time. But it just is interesting to see Deebo Samuel not being involved when Brandon Ayuk is already out for the year. They might be on their 4th-string running back. But as a betting perspective here, Dubs, let me ask you this question. When I see wide receivers get upset and want the football, I typically lend towards going that direction because they're going to get force-fed. I thought A.J. Brown would get a touchdown this past weekend, and he didn't, so it was a little bit off there. Are you focusing maybe on Deebo Samuel from a player prop perspective coming up this weekend, knowing he's screaming and Kyle Shanahan goes, yeah, we might have to get him the football more?
Yeah, he's screaming, and they're certainly going to try and get him a bit more production. But unlike A.J. Brown, where there's still a wealth of offensive superstars that they're trying to split the field with, for Deebo, it's I guess, a case of he's the only guy left out there, so it's a lot easier to scheme up against if you're the opposition. So I don't really think it's going to help his chances drastically. I mean, he's still been seeing plenty of targets. He's had 4 or more in 4 of his last 5 there. I guess last week was a bit of a drop-off. But if you're on the defensive side, looking at the 49ers saying, we've got Brock Purdy, he can only do so much and getting out of the pocket with his wheels. You've got Skittles who's playing banged up, CMC, he's now out again. So I think it's a lot easier in trying to prepare to shut down the 49ers with their offense. And I think with that, it does limit the chances here for Deebo Samuel, who's missing a bit of that offensive spark and missing that first step. So I don't think he's finding separation. He's getting much tougher coverage week in, week out. So with that, not really shocked that we're seeing a bit of a downside with his numbers, but a little surprised that the production has been at the level that it's been at. You highlighted what we have seen with his total offensive numbers. That has not been good enough, but this is a player I'm a little cautious towards betting. Any of the player props there for the 49ers, Donnie?
What an awesome Thursday night football game, too, in the NFC West. That's the Rams and the Niners. But let's keep it moving with the wide receivers here. Love talking about wideouts. Now, we had a healthy wide receiver in A.J. Brown upset. A healthy wide receiver in Deebo Samuel. He's upset. We have another wide receiver that has a little bit of turmoil in the locker room over the past couple weeks with his celebrations and Mike Tomlin calling him out. But some things you can avoid. George Pickens looks like he's doubtful to take on the Philadelphia Eagles this weekend at 425 in a pivotal game for both teams here. George Pickens down. Not a great sight here for that passing game in Russell Wilson.
And the passing game's been looking fantastic. Yeah, I'll be the first person to put the hand up and say Russell Wilson's actually been playing some really good football. Mike Tomlin, what a fantastic head coach. Surprise, surprise things. You're not shocked to hear that. The Steelers have got a really tough matchup going against the Eagles in terms of getting that passing game, getting it downfield there vertically. This is a massive loss. And for Pittsburgh, sitting at 10-3, they're trying to carry that momentum. They can see the Ravens, Baltimore just sitting 2 games back there within the division. But this has been one of the primary threats for Danger Russ. And Danger Russ has been cooking back in his bag, back in the kitchen, heating things up. So not a great outcome here for the Steelers. And Mike Tomlin, I mean, we've seen it there, hard knocks going through the season. What a tremendous watch and what a tremendous, coaching task and assignment this has been with what he continues to do with the Steelers. You look at that roster coming into this year, Donnie, I'm like, finally the record is going to catch up and parallel with the talent pool that they're working with. But here we are again, sitting at 10-3, making a charge towards the playoffs.
I have to appreciate, too, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, like coming into the season, it's like, I can't believe there's not going to be a quarterback, not controversy, but at least a competition. Mike Tomlin always told you from day one, I know what Justin Fields is about. I know what Russ is about. Russ is always going to be my starter. Ooh, that's not fair. That's not fair. Russ was injured to start the season. Fields was okay. He goes, I don't care about Fields. Just put Russ in there. And they have been cooking with Russ. We'll see if they can pull off the upset in Philadelphia. We'll preview that game a little bit later today. But injuries do happen during the regular season. And a tough one happened for the Dallas Cowboys in prime time on Monday night against the Cincinnati Bengals. And that's DeMarvion Overshown. He's been great for the Cowboys, but now you see the injury, ACL, MCL, and PCL. And Mike McCarthy was asked yesterday, is it legitimate to think that we might not even back not only for this season, but even next year? And he said that's on the table. That is a devastating injury. Basically, his knee exploded during that Bengals game.
Yeah, it's really tough to see for any player, especially one with so much talent here, the young linebacker. Season-ending injury, and it was just 16 months ago that Overshown tore the ACL in that left knee going through the preseason there. So a young player who just hasn't had a good run with the injuries, but we've seen the potential. We've seen it out there on the field this season, Donnie. He has looked absolutely fantastic. So a very tough one to swallow here, and very tough, when you've been hampered the last few seasons with such a significant injury, going through that rebuilding process, spending so much time away from the team, in the facility, working out by yourself. But this kid, he looks to be a special kind of athlete, special person. I'm sure he'll get back on that grind and hopefully get back out there. Hopefully it's towards the back end of next season. But if it's not, I'm sure he'll get the full support there of the Cowboys. But yeah, that was a tough one to see.
No doubt about it. By the way, the Dallas Cowboys, you don't have too many ways to lose. Like way back in the day, I believe it was Thanksgiving Day against the Miami Dolphins, Leon Lett slides into a blocked field goal, which gave the Miami Dolphins the victory. You block a punt. Everybody knows, Dubsy, just get away from the punt here. We got the football. And what do the Dallas Cowboys do? Try to retrieve that block punt. Goes right back to Cincinnati. And if you had a ticket on your side for the Dallas Cowboys getting 5.5 points, you go, that's not really the matter here. Cincinnati just get into field goal range, kick a field goal, win this, you'll cover the spread. Then Jamar Chase spins out of a tackle, goes for a touchdown. Cooper Rush stinks, and you lose your wager. Tough scenes out there. The NBA Cup. What happened last night? 2 games? Dubsy and Donnie. We'll get those recapped next.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Dubsy, we're getting good games in the NBA Cup here. Teams playing for a couple $1 million in Las Vegas. Who says no to that? And the teams are playing hard, which included OKC yesterday. They were not a public favorite in that one. The avalanche of money was coming in on the Dallas Mavericks, getting points in Oklahoma City. That game winds up, Dubsy, 118-104 Oklahoma City. And is it any surprise if you see OKC in a big victory? Who was behind that? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 38 minutes played, 15 of 23 from the field, 5 of 9 from three-point range, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, and a block, and 39 points to outdo the trio of Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic, and Klay Thompson.
Sham, wow, sign of the times. OKC now a force in the association, even bigger threat here going through the NBA Cup. This was a big win in the quarters, 118-104. You highlighted SGA, an absolute superstar. And one thing we've seen from his game, and I was watching there last night, Donnie, he is very vocal out there on the floor. I feel like he's been quietly spoken, going through last season, but this year he has taken ownership of this team and taking them to a new height. You look at all the key stats here, both teams sitting right around 45% from the field, 41% there from deep, but they won the turnovers, they won the boards, and with their young superstars coming up clutch, this is what we can expect from OKC on the nightly, and it's a young team that really doesn't go missing too often. If you get them in their building, they're very tough out. They're 10-2 for the season there. I thought Williams, he was fantastic, adding a little 18-piece. And Hardenstein looks to be a revelation this year. He's really having a nice campaign. He was busy on the boards, getting 13 rebounds. And for the Mavericks, they just lacked that step from the halftime break. They only put up 19 in that third quarter, and going into the fourth, they were playing catch-up. OKC, on the defensive side, that's been much improved as well this year. Didn't allow them to get back into it, kept that separation, punched that ticket to the semifinals.
And how about this one? Game number 2, I should say the first of the 2 games was the Milwaukee Bucks and the Orlando Magic. Also a non-public side was the Magic on the road. They were getting 6.5, 7.5 points by game time at some outlets, Dubsy, as high as 8.5 points. They fight hard. A 114-109 victory for the Milwaukee Bucks against the undermanned Orlando Magic, maybe down 2 of their best basketball players. Jalen Suggs goes on the road, 12 of 26 from the floor for 32 points, but it wasn't enough. The one thing that we do know, if you're going to go on the road and play against superstar players like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who dropped 37 points, or Dame Lillard with 28 points, you better be able to shoot the three-point shot as an underdog. Yesterday, the Orlando Magic, Dubs, 6 of 27 from the three-point line, 22%. That's not going to get the job done.
Yeah, that's not good enough, especially going against a Bucks team who's absolutely rolling, playing some great basketball right now. You look at their shooting, very efficient from the field, sitting right around 54%. Big Giannis, he put up a 37-piece, and now suddenly it's Batman and Robin. There was so much smoke, so much talk, speculation earlier in the season that these two superstars just couldn't get along. Well, Giannis, you brought Dame across, and now it's not working out. Well, suddenly it's working out, and both superstars are looking really good. I mean, Dame took over this thing late. He had 28 points, but 9 of those being in the final minute here for the Bucks to just edge their way to victory. Full credit to the Magic. They're playing some strong basketball. They've certainly exceeded my expectations coming in for this season, but it's the Bucks who are absolutely booming right now. Not to say that having NBA Cup experience is going to be a deciding factor, but this will be one of the teams that we saw last year in the semifinals, now punching their ticket back to Las Vegas.
Teams now getting knocked out on the daily out of the NBA Cup, which brings us to our next topic, Dubs. Who's the favorite to actually win right now the NBA Cup at the FanDuel Sportsbook? The Thunder currently is set at a 2-1 price. The Bucks plus 310, the Knicks plus 380. They'll be taking on the Hawks tonight, followed by the Warriors, Rockets, and the Hawks at 17-1. The Thunder as the top dog, and also the Bucks as the top dog. Why? Well, they won their rounds in so far in the NBA Cup, and the other teams are still yet to play. Any numbers there pique your interest on who you might want to lay a wager down on?
Yeah, I think the value is certainly going to be with the teams who are yet to play their quarterfinals, notably between the Hawks and the Knicks tonight. Last week, the market was showing the Knicks as the top team, so obviously odds makers have adjusted that given they've now got to get through Ice Tray in the ATL, but they've been playing some really good basketball. They've got the superstars, they've got the firepower. They've probably been one of the standouts for me early in the year here. They're laying 7.5 for tonight's matchup against the Hawks. So they're expected to get it done. And with that, you're getting a slightly better price. So for me, Donnie, I'd be banking on the depth. I'd be banking on that firepower that we've seen through the starting five and from what we have seen at this point of the season. I like the Knicks. I like the look of that price as well.
From on the court to off the court here, we talked about it in the 7-7 to open up the show, Dubs. Shams Charania reporting back here that Jimmy Butler is now on the table with a legitimate chance to be traded. Now you see him. He's a six-time All-Star. He's a great teammate there, plays hard each and every night. Not having a fantastic season, but having a serviceable season. But he says, I prefer a win-now contender in any trade. So number one, again, it's an interesting move because Jimmy Butler seems like he is Heat culture, but for some reason it's just not working out. They probably want a nice package back for Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy Butler going to a contender, that's a strong guy in the locker room that could upset the apple cart if you get him in and it doesn't work out. How are we feeling about Jimmy Butler on the move, and particularly, would he be a good asset to have on a team trying to make a playoff and or championship run?
Jimmy Butler would be a tremendous asset for any team in the association, whether it's a young team trying to figure things out or whether it is a championship contender. Jimmy has expressed interest in going towards the Golden State Warriors or the Dallas Mavericks, and I can only imagine Jimmy coming into either side there and what he brings, both on the offensive side. We highlighted those numbers, still having a very strong season, but also there on the defensive side. This is a player who can win you a championship. He can shut it down in the postseason, and that's what we've seen for the Heat. I mean, you know, lack thereof with weapons, Jimmy Buckets has absolutely carried him to 2 NBA Finals appearances, and what he's done in between those has been truly nothing short of spectacular. The minutes, the production, the durability, despite dealing with a couple of injuries over the last few years, Jimmy Buckets is the Miami Heat. There's no Miami Heat without Jimmy Buckets. So this would be a sad day, sad face if he were to leave South Beach, Donnie, and watch out. If he were to join a contender, suddenly their stock goes through the roof.
He's played with the Bulls, the Timberwolves, the Sixers, the Heat, and probably looking for his 5th NBA team to play for. Let's go back to the college basketball circuit last night. The Jimmy V. Big games in the Garden. We'll update you on what happened on those next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Dubsy, college basketball, hey, look, it's December. Sometimes you're not paying as much attention as you probably should because most leagues do start their conference play in the month of January, and away you go into the conference playoffs and then into March Madness. But we get some good matchups on a night-to-night basis. And in New York City, we had some really good games to watch, or at least what we thought. The Miami Hurricanes are now 3-7 on the season. Now, is it shameful that you get dusted 75-62 going up against the number one team in the country? Not necessarily, but I got to tell you, sometimes I don't pay as much attention. I had no idea Tennessee was even number one in the country, and they come away with a nice victory in the Garden yesterday over the Miami Hurricanes.
Tennessee made 10 3-pointers, the third straight game it hit at least 10, and the fifth time overall. It was actually a close deficit, close margin going through the second, but eventually the class prevailed. And taking a look at the Volunteers, still keeping that perfect record intact. Lania put up a nice looking performance there, adding a 22-piece, a couple other weapons. Milicic, he added 16 there. It was pretty strong with facilitating a couple of those scoring opportunities. So right now the Volunteers, they can get it done with the low scorer. They can put up plenty from out wide from beyond the arc. And this was clinical, it was professional and polished, as you'd like to see there from the number one team in the nation. But if you're watching this game live and on the betting side of things, you're saying, hey, how are the Hurricanes sticking around with this one going into the business end of that second half? But Tennessee found a way and prevailed, survive, advance, move on to that next one.
Awesome high-scoring game number 2 in the Garden last night between the Arkansas Razorbacks and the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan came in top 15 in the country and comes away with their second loss of the season. This game had it all, an early Michigan lead. Arkansas running in the second half. Michigan coming all the way back, including Arkansas Razorbacks not making their free throws, not scoring, but playing great defense on their final few possessions. The Razorbacks and John Calipari move on 89-87 over those Wolverines.
Do the boogie. Boogie was big there for the Razorbacks, 20 points, and they stormed back into this one. The Wolverines had a chance to square things up, 89 apiece late, but it just wasn't meant to be. So Arkansas, Michigan, both now sit at 8-2 for their campaigns, and both teams were very efficient with their scoring. So no surprises that we got plenty of points there. That total went off at 147.5. I believe there. So high scorer, things you love to see. Both teams very competent from out wide and both getting very physical in the paint. This was probably the matchup of the Tuesday night slate there for me, Donnie. The Razorbacks continue to roar.
How about this game? The Duke Blue Devils 72, Incarnate Word 46. You might say, hey, Duke easy covered that spread. No, they didn't. They were favored by close to 35 points in that game once we had tip. And also, Cooper Flagg, 22 minutes, only 2 of 8 from the floor, and only 6 points here. A lot of other players stepped up for the Duke Blue Devils as the top 5 team, actually ranked number 4 in the country. 8-2 moves to 6 at home at Cameron Indoor. But come on now, 72-46, not a cover. Tough swallow right there, huh? Goodness.
Yeah, it's tough one indeed there, Donnie. Low scorer, tough to get excited about this matchup. You highlighted Cooper Flagg. I mean, just to put up 6 points there from 22 minutes out on the floor, 2 for 8 shooting. Wasn't the most efficient night there for the young superstar with the Duke Blue Devils. But again, enough to get the result back in their environment for the Cardinals. They're always going to be up against it, yet to get a win on the road to keep it within, I guess, less than a 30-point spread. Well done. Good teams cover great teams. While Blue Devils, I think we're still going to see a little bit more there from number 4 in the nation.
By the way, Dubsy, shout out to Big Ten here. Already getting underway in conference action. Wisconsin and Illinois yesterday. Illinois comes away with a home victory, 86-80 over Wisconsin. Wisconsin now 0-2 in the Big Ten. The Illini get their first win in the Big Ten here. I love to see conference play. By the way, the Big Ten has like 70 teams, so they have to actually get their conference underway earlier to squeeze it in here. Love to see it, though. Illinois comes away with a big victory, though.
Yeah, big victory, plenty of points. Again, there, 86-80, total 153. So the overs cashes in, and you look at the key stats, very, very similar performance. This could have gone either way. They're right in the balance, but the last couple of minutes, it was just back and forth. Could not stop the scoring there. So for Illinois, big performance. Kasparis, I'm not even going to try and jump into that last name.
Yeah,
he was very efficient with the 24. Trey White right alongside him there as your victors.
Yeah, it's one of those teams like Illinois. I hope, like, again, I don't have anything against Illinois, but if we have to learn all these names and that starting lineup on a night-to-night basis, if they're really good, that's going to be a tough one here. We're still trying to figure out DJ Uiagalelei, and he doesn't even really play college football anymore. Might take some time to figure out those guys on the Fighting Illini, but a good night overall in college basketball. Houston also pulled out a 20-point victory over Troy, but it's time for hour number 2. And hour number 2, that means NFL action right here on the Early Line.